Hello fellow sim racers. Today's video is a little bit different. I've been challenged by After Midnight, who in turn was challenged by Teabagged to take on the Nordschleife in the transit van. Now, I wouldn't normally bow to public pressure, but this just seemed like it'd be too much fun to say no. Now, if we take a quick look at the sort of times people have been doing in the van, Sabine managed a 10-minute 23-second lap on the unmodified van on Top Gear, while After Midnight, Teabagged and Jimmy Broadbent all lapped in the low 10-minute and 30 seconds with this mod. So let's see what the mystery machine can do. So here we are in the exquisitely modelled transit cab. As I mentioned in my previous video, Gary did an absolutely outstanding job with this mod. He really knocked it out of the park. And full disclosure from the off, I'm not doing live commentary as I drive today, as I've got a bunch of other stuff that I want to talk about, and well, honestly, I just get focused on talking about corner names for 10 minutes straight, and nobody wants to hear that. As you can see, Tiergarten isn't really much of a challenge at these sort of speeds, and you can leave the braking for Hohenrain incredibly late as this van has excellent brakes and ABS. Although that being said, I did lose the back end a little on turn-in there. It was pointed out to me by Viperian that while the Transit does have great brakes, it's not too much of an achievement when you're only doing 80 k's. As you can see, you have to make use of every inch of the track in this van, as there's just no spare power available to rescue you. You have to carry a reasonable amount of speed into the corners, but much more importantly in my opinion, is getting the best possible exit speed. The van likes to understeer a lot, and all the time you're understeering, you're scrubbing off speed in the process. So going in really hot and trying to carry speed through just doesn't work like it does with some other cars. I've got the Sidekick app up on screen so you can see my time and the delta to my previous lap. That lap was in fact just a few hundredths of a second shy of After Midnight's time, so I think there's a pretty good yardstick by which to measure the lap as it progresses. Hats and back's probably the scariest part of this track in the Transit, as evidenced by the fact that I nearly put it in the wall back there, but you really do have to be super committed through here. Now, these next couple of corners are absolutely critical. You've got to maintain your speed and carry that momentum all the way up the long hill to Flugplatz. You can take quite a bit of curb in this van, but it's a balancing act between taking the shortest line and maintaining as much speed as possible. If we were in any other car, we'd be accelerating all the way up the hill here, but it doesn't really happen that way in the Transit van. It's only got 135 bhp to lug 2 tons of commercial vehicle up this steep gradient. So 130 k's over the hump at Flugplatz is a minor miracle as far as I'm concerned. You'll note that I didn't really have to lift there. I'm as surprised as you are. One of the nice things about driving a transit van around the Nordschleife is that the corners that would ordinarily prove to be a challenge are very often just flat out. Changing the subject, that slightly wonky gear change there will cost quite a bit of time on this long fast section of track. There you go, 154 k's, not quite 100 miles an hour, though it does look like it on the speedometer. Still, even at this heady velocity we're able to take Schweidenkreuz flat out, which is something that's usually reserved for vehicles with lots and lots of downforce. Arenberg's a fun little corner in the Transit. I'm just balancing the front end on the brake a little there to control the understeer so I can get as smooth an exit as possible for the run down through the foxhole. Now, let's see if this bad boy can manage 100 miles an hour down the hill here. We're looking for 161k on the Sidekick app. Are we going to make it? Oh, easily. Smashed it. Fast van is fast. Now, not too much braking's needed into the Adenauer Force chicane. As you can see, I'm down on the time I set on my previous lap. Look at me trying to pretend I don't know what the final time is. Trying to stir up some fake drama. On YouTube of all places. If you haven't already seen my video review of this mod, then I'll put a link to it up in the right hand corner of the screen about now. As I said earlier in the video, Gary has done an absolutely outstanding job with this bad boy. I've got a fair amount of experience driving transits, and I have to say this feels absolutely dead on to me. Not only that, but it's a real stunner too. The 3D modelling and textures are absolutely top drawer stuff. Arguably, it's not one of the most exciting vehicles in the world, but it's very good fun to drive. And it's nice to have Assetto Corsa mods that are this, well, close to the real thing. Nobody's ever been stupid enough to let me loose in a Daytona prototype or a Porsche 917, so it's hard to know how well those kind of cars stack up against the real thing. But I gotta tell you, this transit mod is very, very close. Those of you that are paying close attention will have noticed a fair few places where I've left reasonable chunks of time on the table, And I must admit, I've only really done a couple of practice laps, so I'm pretty confident that there's still plenty of time to be found. Probably braking a little bit earlier than I need to down into the valley section here, but as I said before, being quick in this van is all about not losing time mid-corner. So understeer is your enemy. There's just no point in going in all guns blazing and then being slower on turnout. This is definitely the sort of vehicle where the calmer your driving looks, the faster you're probably going. Now, this next corner is probably the least elegant in the Transit van, and I found that leaving it in third and letting it hit the rev limiter was actually quicker than sticking it in fourth and losing momentum up the steep bit of the hill there. Drive it like you rented it. Now, this is the point in the lap where I usually have to remind myself that Bergwerk exists and that I should definitely remember to brake there. This is such a critical corner for lap time because it sets you up for the long drag up the hill to the carousel. As you can see, neat and tidy, no dramas. It doesn't look quick, but that's the key. This is definitely a vehicle where calm is fast. Anyway, the next 45 seconds or so of the lap are completely flat out and rather uneventful. So I'm going to put on some Ultimate Racing 2D on the picture-in-picture to keep you guys entertained. This is normal, totally normal. I'm pretty well prepared for this kind of racing. I remember spending a lot of time ragging the Volvo XC90s around here in the first Forza game, playing split screen with my mate Dave. Good times. Though, to be fair to the Volvo, it definitely had more legs than the Transit, as evidenced by this horrific climb. This uphill section is such a drag, literally. Just watching the speed slowly melt away as you climb is such a demoralising thing. Before you make it to the top, you've got to change down to fourth, not because of the fast left-hander, but because the van just can't take it anymore. While I may not be going all that quickly, it's only used a couple of litres of diesel to make it this far, so there's that. Still losing more and more speed, it's agonising to watch. As soon as the track starts to level off, you can change up again. This is such a quick, terrifying section of track in a proper race car, but it's just the opposite in the Transit van. I changed down to third a tiny bit early there, and it causes the back end to come round a little. Arguably, that's actually not such a bad thing. Maybe I should get the handbrake set up for this. As it's such a softly sprung bouncy vehicle, the Transit absolutely eats the carousel for breakfast. It barely even notices it's there at all. Just using the brake to control the front end and keep the understeer in check. I went a bit far and end up rubbing the curb on the inside, which has robbed the mystery machine of a couple of precious kilometres per hour. Speaking of which, the Scooby-Doo themed skin for the Transit was made by Rob Fitness and it's available on Race Department, and I'll put a link in the video description. Again, the Transit's feeling the misery of a long climb, but we're nearly at Hotlap, which is the highest point on the circuit. As the gradient steepens, the speed melts away even faster, which means you don't have to brake for what's usually a fairly tricky sequence of corners. In a fast car, you'd be forgiven for thinking that you are now on the home stretch, but we've still got another 2 or 3 minutes of time left to go in the Transit. On the plus side, this next sequence of corners all the way through to Brunchen is pretty much flat out or with small lifts, which actually makes it pretty exciting in the Transit. Catching a bit more understeer than I'd like there, which causes me to hit the curb on the right and then run wide onto the grass there. Got away with that, and I don't think it's really cost any time. Now, a small lift here to make sure that I don't run out onto the grass over the crest, which is usually a pretty bad plan. I probably left a little bit of time on the table here, but I don't really want to end up in one of those YouTube crash compilation videos. Despite using all of the track and more, I'd still like to take a later apex through YouTube corner there. So again, a bit more time to be found, but I'm 7/10 up on my target, so I've no real reason to complain. Climbing all over the curb on the inside there doesn't look elegant, but it does seem to work. And while we're in another one of those long flat out sections, did anyone see the IMSA race from Road America last night? Absolutely incredible. The whole season's been filled with instant classics, but the Road America race was on another level entirely. IMSA are holding a serious masterclass on what racing can and should be at the moment, in my opinion. If you didn't catch the race live yesterday, then you should go and find it on catch up. You won't regret it. Again, we're heading up to another pair of corners that would ordinarily be a little bit tricky, but with the Transit, all we need is the tiniest of lifts to settle the front end, and then go down through the gears for the left-hander. I tapped the curb there a little bit and wished I hadn't, but it probably hasn't cost any appreciable time. With the van being set up as softly as it is, you can take whatever line you like through the second carousel, but obviously maximising exit speed is the ultimate goal for the long run down to the finish line. Without wanting to sound like too much of a broken record, the last couple of corners are an absolute formality at these speeds. All you really have to do is turn the wheel. At this stage, there's nothing more I can do to maximise my lap time, and it's just a case of waiting patiently for the timing gantry. As you can see, I'm 2 seconds up on my lap delta, which if you recall was pretty much identical to after midnight's time, so I'm not going to act all faux surprised when we cross the line 2 seconds up. So, there you go, 10 minutes 28.9. Now, I know there were plenty of places where I left time on the table back there, so I'm fairly convinced that with a reasonable amount of practice I could get down to Sabine Schmidt's time. But it's over to you guys. I'm not much of a hot lapper, so let's see some videos from the aliens out there absolutely smashing the Top Gear time. So that's about all I've got to say about transit vans for a little while. If you're interested in downloading the Transit, I've put a link to the video in the description. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, then it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you've got any suggestions for content you'd like to see on the channel in future, then please let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for donating your precious free time by watching. It is very much appreciated. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.